Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Eduwit 16 Digital Class. In this channel, we are going to start with a series of Indian polity. We will be studying in details about the Indian polity, and that too by using a very interesting way of remembering things that is called mnemonics. I hope you know what are mnemonics. Mnemonics are something which you make, a sentence or something which you make by the initials of different concepts. So we will use this particular method to remember the subject. Why this subject, Indian polity? Because it is the most important subject from where many questions come in the competitive exam. If you consider the most challenging competitive exam where many lakhs of aspirants sit every year, that is UPSC, there if you take up the prelims paper, you will see that many questions come from Indian polity, even the current affairs, even the questions which are from current affairs, they are somehow revolving around the articles of Indian Constitution, which is a part of this Indian polity. That make Indian polity a very important subject for any competitive exam, be it UPSC, SSC, state PCS, and even other exams also. Indian polity is such subject from where questions definitely come, and if you make this subject your forte, your area of confidence, this actually can fetch you very good marks and actually can put you one step ahead in the competition. That's why we are starting a series on Indian polity on this channel. Now, if you want, अगर आपको ये वीडियो हिंदी में देखना है तो हिंदी में भी ये वीडियो अवेलेबल है, उसका प्लेलिस्ट अलग से बना हुआ है, आप मेरे चैनल में देख सकते हैं. If you want this video to be in English, you are at the right place, my friend. So this playlist will be of English. Different lectures will come. The series will be like lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3. So I would request you to start from the very first lecture so that you are being able to understand that how exactly we are going about this very subject. Okay. So without much delaying, let us start with the very first chapter or very first section in Indian polity, that is the historical background. Now, whenever you are studying a subject, the very first thing, the very first area which needs to be understood about that subject is the historical background. Even in maths also, if you know that why is it required for us to study the graphs, or why is it important for us to study the different shapes, the volumes, why is it important? If you know the why, then it helps you to develop interest to know more about the subject. If you know that why we are studying that, what is the purpose of this particular concept, and why always remains in the history, key, what is the context, what was the situation where this particular concept developed, or where we got this policy, or where we got this regulation, rule, etc. So you need to understand that situation which is called as the historical background. So we will do the same for this particular subject also. Indian polity comprises of the very big, the very respected, the constitution of our country. Now the constitution of our country has many articles, you know, and we have to understand each and every article that constitute the major part of Indian polity. But while we do that, while we study each and every article of Indian Constitution, we have to understand that why that particular article is there in the Constitution. What was the need for adding that particular article? So to understand that, we have to see the polity. We have to see that how the policies were during the time of the British era. Because the Constitution, I hope you know, this is actually a general knowledge. I hope you know that the Indian Constitution has the major influence of the British Constitution on it. Why? Because we were under the British rule for 200 years, and the rules and many rules and regulations, acts came during this time. Therefore, it is quite natural for the present Indian Constitution to have influence of the British Constitution along with the other constitution. So the basic framework that is there in the Constitution is more or less adopted from the British Constitution. So it becomes all the more necessary for us to understand that how the policies were during the British rule, so that it gives us a better understanding of this subject, Indian polity. Right? So we'll start from historical background. Now forget about the points that I have written on the screen. Forget about it. So what we can do, just listen to me. I am going to tell you one story. It is not any hypothetical story. It is a historical story. Just listen to me. Now it was the time of 1600. The beginning of the 17th century, right? It was the time of 1600, the beginning of the 17th century. Now, if you remember, this is a part of general history, that during 1600, who was ruling in India? It was the Mughals. The Mughals were ruling in India. And in the court of the Mughals, many of the travelers, be it European travelers or the travelers from the Central Asia, they used to come to India. They used to be the guests of the royal kingdom, and they used to move around the kingdom. They used to go to different places and used to write down whatever they feel like about this country, right? And those records which they used to write down, those record had more or less many praises for this country, and sometimes some areas where criticisms were also written. But in major places, the people who used to come to this country, they became a fan of this country, and many of them used to write good things about this country. Like in many of the travelogues, in many of the records, the description of this country was given. The description of the weather was given. The agriculture, the different type of crops that were grown in the country, that were given. So all these things actually acted as information about this country to the people of Europe and Central Asia. Because when this record, they went with the travelers to their own kingdom. In their kingdom, the king from whose court they came to India, that king used to patronize the records, and those records were printed many times. Not printed, sorry. Those records were handwritten and maybe sometimes printed also many times, and they spread it to different parts of Europe, different parts of Central Asia after getting translated in different languages. So they spread to different parts of this continent. Now, during this time, the European youths, they used to read a lot, and they read about the different countries of this whole world. And these youth, because of the development in technology, because of the advent of ship, and because of the opening up of the sea routes, they started thinking of going out of their country, finding out new places and new land, and earning a fortune from trade. Now, the European travelers, when they were reading a lot about the different countries of the world, so they found out that India is a very nice country in terms of many things. India is actually a very beautiful country. Here, the weather is very nice. It's not too cold like their country. It's not too hot also. The people can work here almost 12 months, and different types of crops could be grown here because the soil is so fertile. One very important thing in the weather of India is the monsoon, which is uncommon to any other countries. So this monsoon, this rainfall has helped this country to become a very beautiful country. It has helped in making the soil fertile, and many different crops used to grow in this country, right? So this has made this country into the golden bird, Sone ki chidiya. This country is now a golden bird, and it is now a very attractive to the European youths, who many of them who want to come and discover this country and want to do trade here. One such youth was Christopher Columbus, who went out of Britain to find out India, but because of his destiny, he went to some other direction, and in place of discovering India, he discovered America, and that is history after discovering America. So that is another market he found out for himself. But even now also, the natives of America were all, known as Red Indians, because Christopher Columbus by mistake thought those people to be Indians, but they were not in reality. There were other names also like Vasco da Gama, Marco Polo. These people, they came out of their country and they came to India to do trade, right? So this was a time in 17th century, in the beginning of the 17th century, this was a time when European travelers were coming out of their countries and they were going in different directions to find out new markets to do trade. One such company which became a name for India was East India Company. East India Company was established. From the name itself, you could understand that what was the intention of the establishment of the company. The company wanted to do trade in India, right? So from the name itself, East India Company, you could understand that what could be the intentions of this country, of this company. Now, this East India Company, in the year of 1600, it went to Queen Elizabeth I, who was the crown during that time in Britain. She was ruling Britain at that time. So East India Company went to Queen Elizabeth I and said that, "Madam, we have a beautiful offer for you. What is the offer? That we want you to provide us an exclusive right to do trade, to do commercial affairs in India, and in exchange of that, we will provide you £40,000 to your royal treasury." Okay, so we will provide you £40,000. You provide us with an exclusive charter, exclusive right to do commerce, to do trade, etc. in India. Now the Queen thought for a moment. She also asked her ministers that, is this a good deal? So they found out, the British Parliament actually, they found out that yes, it is a very good deal, because £40,000 was really a great amount at that time. If you see in present day, £40,000 will come out to be as 47.1 million pounds. So you can understand that during that time, the value of 40,000 pound was very much. So Queen Elizabeth then said that Queen Elizabeth once said that it is a beautiful, good offer, and I am providing you with an exclusive charter. Exclusive charter means that no other company of Britain will come to India and trade. It will be only East India Company who will have the share, have the market of India. No other company from Britain will come to India. Okay, so this exclusive charter was signed by the British Crown, by Queen Elizabeth I, and was given to East India Company. After getting this exclusive charter, now this is a big achievement for East India Company. So now they prepared themselves for 8 long years. They prepared themselves, and in 1608, the East India Company came to India. Okay, so in 1608, the East India Company came to India, right? Now, after coming to India, for a few years, they continued with their commercial work. But when they found out that in India was actually divided into small territories during that time, the Mughal rule was gradually, it was not so strong. Gradually, they were, the Mughal rule was disintegrating. I would say that Mughal rule was disintegrating gradually, and the strength of the Mughal rule was losing. So during this time, it became easier for East India Company to manipulate the different territories, the different kings who found out differences among themselves. So manipulate them. By manipulating them, the East India Company gradually made its way into the administrative affairs of this country, and very slowly it grabbed the territories, the territorial powers in this country. After the first battle was the Battle of Plassey. The Battle of Plassey actually gave confidence, super confidence to East India Company that it can now take up territorial powers in the country. The next was the Battle of Buxar, which happened in the year of 1764. Battle of Buxar happened in the year of 1764. After that, in 1765, a treaty was signed. That treaty was known as the Treaty of Allahabad. And in that treaty, Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, these the territorial power of these states went into the hands of East India Company. By territorial power, I am saying that the revenue, which is the most important part of any territory, of any state. So the revenue, the Diwani went into the hands of East India Company. East India Company now became very powerful when it has the financial power of any territory in its hand. Now it can manipulate the king. The Nawab was still ruling, but it has control over the Nawab of Bengal, and the policies, the rules and regulations that came via the Nawab, it has vivid influence of East India Company on it. And when the policies could be manipulated, the policies were always manipulated to bring profit to the employees of East India Company, so that the East India Company could get profits, and the native people, the native traders, they has to face the losses. So this was how the East India Company took up the territories in the country, and it also took up the administrative power, also took up the commercial power, right? So these four first 2 points we have discussed, that how the East India Company came to the country, how number one, how the East India Company got the exclusive right to trade in the country from Queen Elizabeth I, right? Next, in 1765, after coming to the country, after coming to India, it got the Diwani after the Battle of Buxar of the Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, and it started its territorial power. Then East India Company, there was the market, everything was not sunny and good for East India Company throughout. During 1765, it was okay, but after that, East India Company has to face a little setback in terms of its trade. It lost its share of market in America. Now, East India Company was not just using the market of India, but it has its share of market in America, which it lost to the Dutch traders, Dutch tea. Now, one of the major product with which the East India Company was doing the trade was tea, tea. Okay, so East India Company lost its share of market in America to Dutch tea, and tons of store of tea were rotting in the warehouses and the factories of East India Company, right? So at this time, when it lost its share of market in America, which was about more than 50% of its trade, of its revenue, so it was a financial crisis for East India Company. It was not in a position to give the amount which it promised to the British Treasury. It was really a bad situation, a bad time for East India Company. So during this time, the British Parliament started regulating the affairs of the East India Company. For that, many regulations brought into existence, about which we'll discuss in the subsequent videos. So, gradually, East India Company was losing its power because of the chaos and because of the malpractices which were happening inside it. And the dead point, the end point of East India Company happened after the Sepoy Mutiny in the country. Sepoy Mutiny in India took place in 1857. After this Sepoy Mutiny, East India Company was completely abolished by British government, British Parliament, and from 1858 onwards, British Parliament took up the territorial powers which were acquired by East India Company in India and completely abolished East India Company as an administrative body. East India Company was continuing with its commercial affairs, that is another thing. But as an administrative body in the country, East India Company was completely removed. And now the administrative body in the country was British Parliament. From 1858 onwards, it was completely British Parliament, right? And the rule which started from 1858, the rule of the British Parliament or the rule of the British government that started from the year of 1858 continued till 15th of August 1947, which is the day of independence, which is a proud day, proud moment for us Indians, which we celebrate as the Independence Day. And after that, the constitution, the present day constitution came into existence. So this historical background is necessary for us to study. Now after this, we will talk about the rules and regulations and few policies which came during the during the rule of East India Company, and also after, from 1858, when it was under the direct control of the British Parliament. So we'll talk about those in our subsequent video. So let us keep this video till here. So this was a brief discussion on the historical background, that what was the context, how was the world during the 1600 and how the British came into India, what are the major phases of the British rule. From next video onwards, we'll start with the rules, regulations and policies, the important rules, regulations and policies which we need to understand as a pretext for entering into the Constitution of India, for the detailed study of the Constitution of India. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. Also, the subscription of this channel is good. It will be good and profitable for you, because every time when I'll upload the video, you will get the notification of it, and it will be easier for you to follow this series diligently. And since we will study through mnemonics, so this will help you in remembering the subject easily, right? So till then, till I bring the next video, it will come very soon. Till I bring the next video, lecture 2. Stay safe, study well, and be happy. So bye bye and namaste.